Gigi here, and this is Let's Build. If this is your first time, I build a Lego set, time to different media, and talk about the facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is part 2 of the Lego Pokemon Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise versus Pokemon Blue. All footage I'm using is for science, educational, and research purposes. My content is transformative and protected under fair use. All footage is time-lapse with commentary. I apologize in advance for pronouncing any names or places incorrectly. This is also week 14 with my braces. Spoilers ahead, you've been warned. I will be breaking this into 3 parts, 1 episode per Pokemon, and I'll be going in order of the build instructions. I'll also be picking up the gameplay where I left off from part 1, so you don't have to watch the intro all over again, and I already have my starter Pokemon Squirtle already evolved into Blastoise. Specifications focusing on Blastoise. Recreate the pinnacle of your Pokemon training journey with this epic Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise model building kit for adults. This Pokemon's figure set includes 3 iconic grass, fire, and water-type Pokemon in their final evolutions, evoking memories of your mastery as a trainer. This set includes Pokemon Battle action figure Blastoise, which has an articulated head, arms, and water cannons. As a surprise, this Pokemon model kit hides an Easter egg awaiting to be discovered. The figure can stand alone or be mounted on a stand that comprises a wave-breaking beach, representing this Pokemon's type and making one epic battleground. Blastoise stands at 7 inches tall. Bio: cannons at the ready. Lego Pokemon Blastoise is poised for battle, but, in fact, is quite friendly to humans. Catching and training Pokemon. For fans around the world of all ages, the memory of catching and training these Pokemon is still connected with deep affection and nostalgia, helping them grow, seeing them reach their full potential. They are classic examples of the amazing creatures we have met over the decades, and the stories that keep us coming back to the Pokemon universe. Pokedex entries focusing on unique information. Red and Blue: a brutal Pokemon with pressurized water jets on its shell. They are used for high-speed tackles. Yellow: once it takes aim at its enemy, it blasts out water with even more force than a fire hose. Gold: it deliberately makes itself heavy so that it can withstand the recoil of the water jets it fires. Silver: the rocket cannons on its shell fire jets of water capable of punching holes through thick steel. Crystal: it firmly plants its feet on the ground before shooting water from the jets on its back. Ruby and Sapphire: Blastoise has water spouts that protrude from its shell. The water spouts are very accurate. They can shoot bullets of water with enough accuracy to strike empty cans from a distance of over 160 feet. Fire Red: it crushes its foe under its heavy body to cause fainting. In a pinch, it will withdraw inside its shell. Mega Blastoise from Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee: the cannon on its back is as powerful as a tank gun. Its tough legs and back enable it to withstand the recoil from the firing cannon. Blastoise, known as Kamex in Japan, is a Pokemon species in Nintendo and Game Freak's Pokemon media franchise. A blue tortoise-based Pokemon, it is the evolved form of Wartortle and the final evolution of Squirtle. First introduced in the video games Pokemon Red and Blue, it is one of the 3 final evolutions of the first Pokemon players can choose from, alongside Venusaur and Charizard, and is featured on the box art of Pokemon Blue. Since Blastoise's debut, it has appeared in multiple games including Pokemon Go and Pokemon the Trading Card Game, as well as various merchandise. It was among the most popular Pokemon action figures as of September 2000, and Blastoise card was among the most valuable in the trading card game. Classified as a water-type Pokemon, Blastoise is a large blue bipedal turtle Pokemon featuring a pair of water cannons protruding from its shell above its shoulders and 3 claws on its hands and feet. It has received multiple powered-up forms, including Mega Blastoise and the larger Gigantamax Blastoise, which changes its design. Blastoise has received positive reception, identified as one of the most popular Pokemon. The nature and workings of Blastoise's water cannons were the subject of scholarly commentary, with one author estimating that they could lift Blastoise 10 stories, and another estimating that they could produce 386,000 joules of energy. The way the series handled its cannons was also a subject of some commentary, with criticism following the game no longer having water come from these cannons, and praise for changing it back. Concept and creation. Blastoise is a species of fictional creatures called Pokémon, created for the Pokémon media franchise. Developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo, the Japanese franchise began in 1996 with the video games Pokémon Red and Green for the Game Boy, which were later released in North America as Pokémon Red and Blue in 1998. In these games and their sequels, the player assumes the role of a trainer whose goal is to capture and use the creatures' special abilities to combat other Pokémon. Some Pokémon can transform into stronger species through a process called evolution, via various means, such as exposure to specific items. Each Pokémon has one or two elemental types, which can define its advantages and disadvantages when battling other Pokémon. A major goal in each game is to complete the Pokédex, a comprehensive Pokémon encyclopedia, by capturing, evolving, and trading with other trainers to obtain individuals from all Pokémon species. Blastoise is classified as a Water-type Pokémon, evolving from the Pokémon Wartortle, which itself is an evolution of Squirtle. It evolves via leveling up through battling other Pokémon. According to a group called Helix Chamber, Wartortle was originally intended to evolve into a Pokémon called Totartle, based on a sprite sheet that they had. A Pokémon that Polygon writer Allegra Frank believed resembled Wartortle more than Blastoise did. A sprite resembling Blastoise was also in this sheet, leading Frank to speculate that it was later made into Wartortle's evolution. Design. Blastoise is a large bipedal turtle Pokémon. Its body is blue and mostly hidden by its tough brown shell. This shell has a cream-colored underside and a white ridge encircling its arms and separating the upper and lower halves. Two powerful water cannons, or jet nozzles, reside at the top of its shell over its shoulders. These cannons can be extended or withdrawn. Blastoise's head has triangular ears that are black on the inside, small brown eyes, and a cream-colored lower jaw. Its arms are thick, and it has 3 claws on each hand. Its feet have 3 claws on the front and 1 on the back. Poking out from the bottom of its shell is a stubby tail. The powerful cannons on this Pokémon's back can produce water blasts that can pierce steel and concrete and be used for high-speed charges and propelling itself into the air. The speed of Blastoise's charges is similar to the force of a rocket. Blastoise makes itself heavy to withstand these powerful blasts and crush its opponents. It is shown in the Pokémon the Series episode, Beach Blank Out Blastoise, that Blastoise can take the role of a leader in a large group of Squirtle and Wartortle. Its preferred habitat seems to be freshwater ponds and lakes. Blastoise is capable of flying by propelling itself with water from the back openings of its shell. As shown in Pokémon Sleep, Blastoise is known to sleep soundly while protected by its tough shell. It has also been seen sleeping with its belly exposed on very rare occasions, meaning that it is feeling completely secure in its surroundings and has quickly fallen asleep. In Gen 2, Blastoise and its pre-evolved forms were the only known Pokémon capable of learning the move Skull Bash naturally, but other Pokémon could still inherit it via breeding. Mega Blastoise. Mega Blastoise has 2 smaller shells over its arms, each with its own water cannon. Small ridges develop over its now red eyes and extend to its ears, which angle slightly backwards, and there's a small point on its chin. The 2 cannons on its back merge into a single central water cannon of greater size that extends forward over Mega Blastoise's head and can be retracted into its shell. Mega Blastoise has more aggressive disposition due to its increased strength. The power of its main cannon is equivalent to that of a tank gun at minimum and possesses a blast range of over 6 miles, or 10 kilometers. Its strengthened legs and back enable it to withstand the recoil from its own blasts, but it can also use its arm cannons to further support itself by using moves like Ice Beam to latch itself to the ground before firing a massive attack, such as during its burst attack in Pokken Tournament. Gigantamax Blastoise. As Gigantamax Blastoise, it becomes larger. Its eyes are white with bright blue sclerae. Its blue arms, head, and legs change to light blue, and the underside of its shell becomes dark red. Its shell becomes darker and transforms into a battleship-like formation, with 31 cannons of different sizes. Sets of twin cannons emerge from hexagon and rectangle-shaped holes within the shell, and the main cannon protrudes from the center. Several white triangular spots are located on its tail and legs. 3 red clouds surround the main cannon. Gigantamax Blastoise can adapt to any situation using various cannon combinations. It is not very good at precision shooting, so instead of aiming its attacks, it prefers to overwhelm its opponent by launching dynamic, powerful torrents from its cannons. According to one legend, its main cannon is so staggeringly powerful that it can blast holes through mountains. Gigantamax Blastoise can also individually align with 12 cannons surrounding its main cannon to attack in any direction. Gigantamax Blastoise is the only known Pokémon capable of using the G-Max move, G-Max Cannonade. Appearances. Blastoise originally appeared in the video games Pokémon Red and Blue, appearing on the cover art of Blue, typically obtained in each game by evolving a Squirtle into a Wartortle and then to a Blastoise. The games have 3 initial Pokémon choices called Starter Pokémon, offered by the character Professor Oak: Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. If the player chooses Squirtle, the rival will choose Bulbasaur to counter it. If they choose Charmander, the player's rival Blue will instead choose Squirtle and eventually evolve it into a Blastoise. In Pokémon Yellow, Squirtle can be obtained from a character named Officer Jenny. Remakes of Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow feature Blastoise as well, including Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, and Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. Blastoise, as well as its prior forms, appear in all subsequent mainline Pokémon games released since, aside from Pokémon Legends Arceus. In both Pokémon Sword and Shield and Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, Blastoise is only made available in downloadable content released at a later date. Blastoise is featured in multiple other Pokémon games, including Pokémon Go, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon series, and new Pokémon Snap. Blastoise appears in the Pokémon trading card game, first introduced in the original base set run of cards. In order to convince Nintendo of the viability of the card game in English-speaking markets, the company Wizards of the Coasts created a Blastoise card as a proof of concept, of which 2 were printed, though only 1 is known to exist as of December 2023. In Pokken Tournament DX, Blastoise appears as a playable character and can turn into Mega Blastoise. It also appears as a playable character in Pokémon Unite and can equip different costumes. Blastoise appears as a summonable ally in multiple Super Smash Bros. Entries, including Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 64 and Super Smash Bros. Melee. In Pokémon the TV series, Blastoise makes few appearances. It appears as a partner of the protagonist Ash Ketchum's rival, Gary Oak, and also appears in the episode Beach Blankout Blastoise, and also appears in the film Pokémon the First Movie. Reception. Blastoise has been a fan favorite since the release of Pokémon Red and Blue, and one of the best-known Pokémon species according to Beckett Pokémon Unofficial Collector. Writer Sean Cooper who attributed this to its appearance on the cover of Pokemon Blue. Polygon writer Ryan Gilliam felt that Blastoise was a shining beacon of water-type Pokemon, praising it for how cool it was, as well as how well it pulls off the shell cannons. Games beat writer Jeff Grubbs and Mike Minotti both felt that Blastoise was a cooler Pokemon than Charizard, Grubbs remarking how powerful it looks. Minotti believed that it, alongside the other two, resembled monsters, comparing it positively to later starter final forms, which he believed were too human-like. IGN writer Rich felt that despite enjoying dragons, he found the concept of a blue turtle with giant cannons amazing, regarding it as one of the best Pokemon. IGN Southeast Asia writer Dale Bashir regarded it as one of the most important Pokemon, attributing the popularity of Red and Blue in part on Blastoise's design. Blastoise was the subject of a viral rap song called Blastoise by musician Gwen Wunner, which paid tribute to it. This song went viral on TikTok with videos produced featuring footage from Pokken Tournament of Blastoise set to music. Kotaku writer Kenneth Shepard lamented how Charizard got more focus than Blastoise and Venusaur from both Nintendo and the fans, despite receiving some love. He expressed appreciation for the song, as well as it being more popular on TikTok than the rapper's songs for the other two. Destructoid writer Eric Von Allen found Blastoise's appearance in new Pokemon Snap to be one of the best moments of the game, considering finding it to be a magical moment with a good way to end the game for him. He felt that the Blastoise flying away contributed to the significance of this moment. Professor João Paulo dos Anjos analyzed the power of Blastoise's water cannons and hydro pump attack, estimating that they would have a lot of power, but only be able to produce water for less than 0.118 seconds, based on his math and estimations. He believed that this was reflected in the lower accuracy of hydro pump, stating that a Blastoise would have a good shot with its hydro pump. He estimated that each shot of a water cannon would have the power of 1,300 kilogram car going 80 kilometers per hour. While analyzing Mega Blastoise's additional water cannon, he came to the conclusion that hydro pump by Mega Blastoise would be 3 times stronger. He also determined that a Blastoise could fly at the height of a 10-story building before the hydro pump ran out. In another paper, as part of the Journal of Interdisciplinary Science, author Thomas Codd analyzed the 3 final forms of the starter Pokemon, deducing that Blastoise's water cannons were capable of producing 386,000 joules of energy and was the second strongest above Venusaur and below Charizard. In games such as Pokemon Stadium, Blastoise's water cannons shoot water when Blastoise uses certain attacks. According to Inside Games, this changed in Pokemon X and Y, where it shoots water from its mouth, a trend that continued until Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Comicbook.com writer Tannen Dedmond identified fan demand for Blastoise to shoot water from its cannons, expressing hope that comments from Pokemon series producer Junichi Masuda that Sword and Shield would feature more high-quality animations. The change in Scarlet and Violet was met with positive reception from fans. According to Nintendo of America marketer Gail Tilden, Blastoise, alongside Charizard, was by far the best-selling Pokemon action figure. The Blastoise presentation card, created as a proof of concept for the Pokemon trading card game, is among the most valuable Pokemon cards, having sold for $360,000 US. Beckett Pokemon Unofficial Collector staff identified a video of a child getting a Blastoise card as having contributed to Blastoise's popularity. Pokemon Red version and Pokemon Blue version are 1996 role-playing video games, or RPGs, developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo for the Game Boy. They are the first installments of Pokemon video game series and were first released in Japan as Pocket Monsters Red and Pocket Monsters Green, followed by the special edition Pocket Monsters Blue later that year. The games were released internationally in 1998 and 1999 as Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, while an enhanced version, Pokemon Yellow version, Special Pikachu Edition, was released in Japan in 98 and in other regions in 99 and 2000. The player controls the protagonist from an overhead perspective and navigates the fictional region of Kanto in a quest to master Pokemon battling. The goal is to become the Pokemon League champion by defeating the 8 gym leaders and the best Pokemon trainers in the Kanto region, the Elite Four. Another objective is to complete the Pokedex, an in game encyclopedia, by obtaining all 151 Pokemon. Red and Blue use the Game Link cable, which connects to Game Boy systems and allows Pokemon to be traded or battled between the games. Both versions feature the same plot, and while they can be played separately, players must trade between both games to obtain all original 151 Pokemon. Red and Blue were well received, with critics praising the multiplayer options, especially the concept of trading. They received an aggregated score of 89% on game rankings and are considered among the greatest games ever made, perennially ranked on top of game lists, including at least 4 years on IGN's Top 100 Games of All Time. The games marked the beginning of a multi-billion-dollar franchise, jointly selling over 400 million copies worldwide. The red and blue versions were remade for Game Boy Advance, and later the Nintendo Switch for the 30th anniversary, as Fire Red and Leaf Green in 2004, while Yellow was remade for Nintendo Switch as Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee in 2018. The originals were re-released on the Virtual Console service for the Nintendo 3DS in 2016 to commemorate their 20th anniversaries. Gameplay: Pokemon Red and Blue are played in third-person view, overhead perspective, and consist of 3 basic screens: an overworld, in which the player navigates the main character, a side view battle screen, a menu interface in which the player may configure their Pokemon, items, or gameplay settings. The player can use their Pokemon to battle other Pokemon. When the player encounters a wild Pokemon or is challenged by a trainer, the screen switches to a turn-based battle screen that displays the 2 engaged Pokemon. During the battle, the player may choose to fight using one of up to 4 moves, use an item, switch to the active Pokemon, or attempt to flee. However, fleeing is not possible in trainer battles. Pokemon have hit points, or HP. When a Pokemon's HP is reduced to 0, it faints and can no longer battle until it is revived. Once an enemy Pokemon faints, the player Pokemon that were involved in the battle receive a certain number of experience points, or EXP. After accumulating enough EXP, a Pokemon will level up. A Pokemon's level controls its physical properties, such as battle statistics acquired and the moves it has learned. Some Pokemon may also evolve in certain levels. These evolutions affect the statistics and the levels at which new moves are learned. Pokemon at higher stages of evolution gain more statistics each time they level up, although they may not learn new moves as early, if at all, compared to the lower stages of evolution. Catching Pokemon is another essential element. While battling with a wild Pokemon, the player may throw a Pokeball at it. If the Pokemon is successfully caught, it will become under the player's ownership. Factors in the success rate of capture include the HP of the target Pokemon, whether it is under a status effect, and the type of Pokeball used. The lower the target's HP and the stronger the status effect and type of Pokeball, the higher the success rate of capture. The ultimate goal is to complete the entries in the Pokédex, a comprehensive Pokemon encyclopedia, by capturing, evolving, and trading to obtain all 151 creatures. Pokemon Red and Blue allow players to trade Pokemon between 2 cartridges via a Game Link cable. This method of trading must be done to fully complete the Pokédex, since certain Pokémon will only evolve upon being traded, and each of the two games have version-exclusive Pokémon. The link cable also makes it possible to battle another player's Pokémon team. When playing Red or Blue on a Game Boy Advance or SP, the standard GBA/SP link cable will not work. Players must use the Nintendo Universal Game Link cable instead. Moreover, the English versions are incompatible with their Japanese counterparts, and such trades will corrupt the save files, as the game will use different languages and therefore different character sets. As well as trading with each other, and Pokemon Yellow, Red, and Blue can trade Pokemon with the second generation of Pokemon games, Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. However, there are limitations. The games cannot link if one player's party contains Pokemon or moves introduced in the second generation of games. Also, using the transfer pack for the Nintendo 64, data such as Pokemon and items from Pokemon Red and Blue can be used in the Nintendo 64 games Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2. Red and Blue are incompatible with the Pokemon games of the later Advanced generation for the Game Boy Advance and GameCube. Bugs and glitches. Pokemon Red and Blue are notable for a large quantity of glitches, possibly due to their scope in comparison to Game Freak's development experience at the time. One of the most popular glitches in Red and Blue involves encountering Missing No, short for missing number, a glitch Pokemon with multiple forms that can arise when different glitches are performed. Additionally, several other Pokemon can be encountered using glitches, such as the otherwise unobtainable mythical Pokemon Mew. Another glitch, dubbed the EXP Underflow glitch, allows players to manipulate unsigned integers in the game's code for Pokemon in the medium-slow experience group in order to max out the level of any such Pokemon. Plot: the story begins in their hometown of Pallet Town in the Kanto region, inspired by, but not to be confused with, the real-life Kanto region of Japan. After venturing alone into the tall grass, the player is stopped by Professor Samuel Oak, a famous Pokemon researcher. Professor Oak explains to the player that wild Pokemon may be living there, and encountering them alone will be very dangerous. He takes the player to his laboratory, where the player meets Professor Oak's grandson, a rival aspiring Pokemon trainer. The player and the rival are both instructed to select starter Pokemon for their travels out of Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander. Oak's grandson will always choose the Pokemon which is stronger against the player's starting Pokemon. He will then challenge the player to a Pokemon battle with their newly obtained Pokemon, and will continue to battle the player at certain points. While visiting the region's cities, the player will encounter special establishments called gyms. Inside these buildings are gym leaders, each of whom the player must defeat in a Pokemon battle to obtain a total of 8 gym badges. Once the badges are acquired, the player is given permission to enter the Pokemon League in the Indigo Plateau, which consists of the best-known Pokemon trainers in the Kanto region. There, the player will battle the Elite Four and finally the Pokemon League champion, the player's rival. Throughout, the player battles Team Rocket, a criminal organization that uses the Pokemon for various crimes. They devise numerous plans for stealing rare Pokemon, which the player must foil. Setting: Pokemon Red and Blue take place in the region of Kanto, which is based on the real-life Kanto region of Japan. This is one distinct region, as shown in later games, with different geographical habits for the 151 existing Pokemon species, along with other human-populated towns, cities, and routes connecting locations with one another. Some areas are only accessible once the player learns a special ability or gains a special item. Kanto has 11 settlements: Pallet Town, Viridian City, Pewter City, Cerulean City, Vermilion City, Lavender Town, Celadon City, Fuchsia City, Saffron City, Cinnabar Island, and the Indigo Plateau. All of these, other than Pallet Town, Lavender Town, and Indigo Plateau, have a gym with a leader who serves as a boss, and the battles against the Elite Four and the final rival battle occur at Indigo Plateau. Areas in which the player can catch Pokemon range from caves, such as Mount Moon, Rock Tunnel, Seafoam Islands, and Cerulean Cave, to the sea where the kinds of Pokemon available to catch vary. For example, Tentacool can only be caught either through fishing or when the player is in a body of water, riding his Pokemon using Surf in routes 19 through 21, while Zubat can only be caught in caves. Development. The game developer Satoshi Tajiri pitched the concept of Pokemon to Nintendo's staff in 1990 and was met with skepticism. They believed his ideas were too ambitious and found it too difficult to see the appeal. However, Shigeru Miyamoto saw great potential in the idea and convinced the company to go ahead with the project. The initial concept for Pokemon stemmed from the hobby of insect collecting, a popular pastime which Tajiri enjoyed as a child. While growing up, however, he observed more urbanization taking place in the town where he lived, and as a result, the insect population declined. Tajiri noticed that kids now played in their homes instead of outside, and he came up with the idea of a video game containing creatures that resembled insects called Pokemon. He thought kids could relate with the Pokemon by individually naming them and then controlling them to represent fear or anger as a good way of relieving stress. However, Pokemon never bleed nor die in battle, they only faint. This was a very touchy subject to Tajiri, as he did not want to further fill the gaming world with pointless violence. The concept of trading Pokemon was inspired by a frustrating experience Tajiri had while playing Dragon Quest II, Luminaries of the Legendary Line. Tajiri was attempting to obtain an item that could only be obtained by a rare drop from an enemy, but he was not able to acquire it. Ken Sugimori was also playing Dragon Quest II at the time and was able to acquire two of those rare items. Wishing to obtain Sugimori's extra copy, Tajiri attempted to figure out if it was possible to trade items between games, but realized that this was not possible on the Famicom. When the Game Boy was released, Tajiri thought the system was perfect for his idea, especially because of the link cable, which he envisioned would allow players to trade Pokemon with each other. This concept of trading information was new to the video game industry because previously connected cables were only being used for competition. I imagined a chunk of information being transferred by connecting two Game Boys with special cables. And I went, wow, that's really going to be something, said Tajiri. Upon hearing of the Pokemon concept, Shigeru Miyamoto suggested creating multiple cartridges with different Pokemon in each, noting that it would assist the trading aspect. Tajiri was also influenced by Square's Game Boy game The Final Fantasy Legend, which he said gave him the idea that more than just action games could be developed for the Game Boy. The main character, Satoshi, was named after Tajiri himself. According to Tajiri, basically he is me as a kid. The rival character, Shigeru, was named after fellow Nintendo developer Shigeru Miyamoto, whom Tajiri regarded as a mentor and role model. When Ken Sugimori, an artist and longtime friend of Tajiri, headed the development of drawings and designs of the Pokemon, working with a team of fewer than 10 people who conceived the various designs for all 151 Pokemon. Atsuko Nishida created the designs for Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, and many others. Sugimori, in turn, finalized each design, drawing the Pokemon from various angles in order to assist Game Freak's graphics department in properly rendering the creature. Originally called Capsule Monsters, the title went through several transitions due to trademark problems, becoming Capumon and Capumon with a K, before eventually settling upon Pocket Monsters. Tajiri always thought that Nintendo would reject his game, as the company did not really understand the concept at first. However, the games turned out to be a success, something Tajiri and Nintendo never expected, especially because of the declining popularity of the Game Boy at the time. Tajiri said that the Pokeball concept was inspired by Ultra 7's Capsule Monsters from the tokusatsu superhero television series Ultra 7 that ran from 1967 to 1968. Nintendo spent $13 million marketing Pokemon Red and Blue in the United States. Music. The game's music was composed by Junichi Masuda, who used the 4 sound channels of the Game Boy to create both the melodies and the sound effects, the Pokemon cries heard upon encountering them. He composed the opening theme with the battle scenes in mind, using white noise to sound like marching music and imitate a snare drum. Masuda wrote the music at his home on a Commodore Amiga computer, which only features PCM sample playback and converted to the Game Boy with a program that he had written. Release. In Japan, Pocket Monsters Red and Green were the first versions released. Development was completed by October 95 and release was originally planned for December 21st, 1995, but was delayed until February 27, 1996, because the derivative products were not yet ready for sale. After a slow start, they continued to sell well. Several months later, Pocket Monsters Blue was released in Japan as a mail-order-only special edition to subscribers of Koro Koro Comic on October 15, 96. It was later re-released to general retail October 10, 1999. It features updated in-game artwork and new dialogue. Using Blastoise as its mascot, the code, script, and artwork for Blue were used for the international release of Red and Green, which were renamed Red and Blue. To create more interest, Tajiri revealed an extra Pokemon called Mew, hidden within them, which he believed created a lot of rumors and myth around the game, and kept the interest alive. The creature was originally added by Shigeki Morimoto as an internal prank and was not intended to be exposed to consumers. It was not until later that Nintendo decided to distribute Mew through a Nintendo promotional event. However, in 2003, a glitch was discovered that allowed players to obtain Mew without relying on official Nintendo events. During the North American localization of Pokemon, a small team led by Hiro Nakamura went through the individual Pokemon, renaming them for Western audiences based on their appearance and characteristics after approval from Nintendo. In addition, during this process, Nintendo trademarked the 151 Pokemon names in order to ensure that they would be unique to this franchise. During the translation process, it became apparent that simply altering the text from Japanese to English was impossible. The games had to be entirely reprogrammed from scratch due to the fragile state of their source code, a side effect of the unusually lengthy development time. Therefore, the games were based on the more modern Japanese version of Blue, modeling its programming and artwork after Blue, but keeping the same distribution of Pokemon found in the Japanese Red and Green cartridges. As the finished Red and Blue versions were being prepared for release, Nintendo allegedly spent over $50 million on promotion, fearing the series would not be appealing to American children. The Western localization team warned that the cute monsters may not be accepted by American audiences, and instead recommended they be redesigned and beefed up. Then President of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, refused, and instead viewed the game's possible reception in America as a challenge to face. Despite these setbacks, the reprogrammed Red and Blue versions with their original creature designs were eventually released in North America on September 28, 98, over 2.5 years after Red and Green were distributed in Japan. The games were received extremely well by the foreign audiences, and Pokemon went on to become a lucrative franchise in America. The same versions were later re-released in Australia sometime later in 1998, and in Europe on October 5, 99, being the second-to-last video game released for the original Game Boy in Europe, with Pokemon Yellow version, Special Pikachu Edition being the last. In Portugal, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue were officially released on October 15, 99, in the town of Montreal. Nintendo's local distributor at the time, Concentra, in partnership with the local parish council, represented by Isabel Damasceno and the mayor of La Area, Fernando Lopez Jorge, symbolically changed the town's name to Pokemonte Real for the day. The launch event, organized by the Lisbon-based agency Bago, included around 50 children from the area and cost 5,000 cantos. Ricardo Feist, Concentra's marketing director, selected Montreal due to the similarity between the town's name and the game's title, and also to offer an opportunity to children living outside major urban centers. He also noted that the animated series was already being broadcast on the SIC television network on weekend mornings. He expressed hopes of replicating the success seen in other countries, aiming to sell 50,000 units of Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue by the end of the year. Concentra also announced merchandising plans and allocated 35,000 cantos to the entire marketing campaign, with the explicit goal of establishing a Pokemania in Portugal. Reception for Pokemon Red and Blue. The games received mostly positive reviews, holding an aggregated score of 88% on game rankings. Special praise was given to its multiplayer features, the ability to trade and battle Pokemon with one another. Craig Harris of IGN gave the games a masterful 10 out of 10, noting that even if you finish the quest, you still might not have all the Pokemon in the game. The challenge to catch 'em all is truly the game's biggest draw. He commented on the popularity, especially among children, describing it as a craze. GameSpot's Peter Bartholow gave the games a great 8.8 out of 10, cited the graphics and audio as somewhat primitive, but stated that these were the only drawbacks. He praised the replay value due to the customization and variety and commented on their universal appeal. Under its cuddly exterior, Pokemon is a serious and unique RPG with lots of depth and excellent multiplayer extensions. As an RPG, the game is accessible enough for newcomers to the genre to enjoy, but will entertain hardcore fans as well. It's easily one of the best Game Boy games to date. The success of these games has been attributed to their innovative gaming experience rather than audiovisual effects. Papers published until 1999 by the Columbia Business School indicate both American and Japanese children prefer the actual gameplay of a game over special audio or visual effects. In Pokemon games, the lack of these artificial effects has actually been said to promote the child's imagination and creativity. With all the talk of game engines and texture mapping and so on, there is something refreshing about this superlative gameplay which makes you ignore the cutesy 8-bit graphics, commented The Guardian. During the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences' second annual Interactive Achievement Awards, Pokemon Red and Blue won the award for Outstanding Achievement in Character or Story Development, along with receiving nominations for Console Game of the Year, Console Role-Playing Game of the Year, and Outstanding Achievement in Interactive Design. Legacy. The video game website OneUp.com composed a list of the top 5 late-to-the-party games, showing selected games that prove a gaming's platform untapped potential, and were one of the last games released for their respective console. Red and Blue were ranked first and called Nintendo's secret weapon, when they were released for the Game Boy in the late 1990s. The success of which revitalized the Game Boy in the late 90s. Nintendo Power listed the Red and Blue versions together as the third best video game for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, stating that something kept them playing until they caught every Pokemon. Game Informer's Ben Reeves called them, along with Pokemon Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal, the second best Game Boy games and stated that it had more depth than it appeared. Official Nintendo magazine placed the Red and Blue versions 52nd on their list of 100 best Nintendo games of all time. In 2019, PC Magazine named them on their list of 10 best Game Boy games. In 2023, Game Extension included them on their best JRPGs of all time list, growing into an international phenomenon and popularizing the monster-catching genre. Red and Blue made number 72 on IGN's Top 100 Games of All Time in 2003, in which the reviewers noted that the pair of games started a revolution, and praised the deep game design and complex strategy as well as the option to trade between the other games. 2 years later, it climbed to number 70 in the updated list, with the game's legacy again noted to have inspired multiple video game sequels, movies, television shows, and other merchandise, strongly rooting it in popular culture. In 2007, Red and Blue were ranked at number 37 on the list, and the reviewers remarked on their longevity for everything that has come in the decade since. It all started right here with Pokemon Red and Blue. Its unique blend of exploration, training, battling, and trading created a game that was far more in depth than it appeared at first, and one that actually forced the player to socialize with others in order to truly experience all that it had to offer. The game is long, engrossing, and sparkles with that intangible addictiveness that only the best titles are able to capture. Say what you will about the game, but few gaming franchises can claim to be this popular 10 years after they hit the store shelves. The games are widely credited with starting and helping pave the way for the successful multi-billion-dollar series. 5 years after Red and Blue's initial release, Nintendo celebrated its Pokemon-anniversary. George Harrison, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Corporate Communications of Nintendo of America, stated that those precious gems, Pokemon Red and Blue, have evolved into Ruby and Sapphire. The release of Pokemon Pinball kicks off a line of great new Pokemon adventures that will be introduced in the coming months. The series has since sold over 300 million games, all accredited to the enormous success of the original Red and Blue versions. For their depiction of the Pokemon species Jynx, Pokemon Red and Blue were named the ninth most racist video game of all time by Complex. On February 12, 2014, an anonymous Australian programmer launched Twitch Plays Pokemon, a social experiment on the video streaming website Twitch. The project was crowdsourced attempt to play a modified version of Pokemon Red by typing commands into the channel's chat log, with an average of 50,000 viewers participating at the same time. The result was compared to watching a car crash in slow motion. The game was completed March 1st, 2014, boasting 390 hours of multi-user controlled non-stop gameplay. In 2017, the Strong National Museum of Play inducted Pokemon Red and Green to its World Video Game Hall of Fame. In October 2021, Japanese Sumo Association formed a partnership with the Pokemon Company to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Pokemon Red and Blue, and professional sumo referees were seen wearing Pokeball-themed kimono during the January 2022 tournament. I'm using the same editing rules for gameplay as Part 1, where I was cutting out grinding, most menu screens, and messing around in the Poke Centers and marts. I added the battle animations for a good part of this gameplay, but when I acquired the EXP All, the amount of text slowed the gameplay too much, so I turned off the animations for battle scenes. The version of Pokemon Blue I'm playing is called Gen 1 Recomp, in combination with the Vortex mod, which brings the flat 2D world of the original Pokemon into a variety of 3D modes. It can even be played in first-person view. I decided to play this way to add more interesting gameplay to watch, since I played the original yellow version for the Motion Pikachu build. Even though it is not a perfect mod yet, there are near constant updates. Some of the sprites need to be cleaned up, and the screen will default to the original flat view when entering and exit certain areas. I still enjoyed having the different options available for zoom, angle, and speed. My favorite option being speed. There was a part of my gameplay where my ADHD kicked in, and I forgot to finish beating the Celadon gym when I left to level grind my Mon, so I had to go back and do that when I realized why I couldn't use the HM strength. As for the Lego build, I really liked his details and that his battle platform seemed to be using the move Surf, while the Blastoise is using the move Hydro Pump, with the water shooting out of the shell cannons. Total build time 4 hours, 14 minutes, 37 seconds, which means you could watch Pokemon the first movie at 75 minutes, the CGI remake Pokemon Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution at 98 minutes, and 3 episodes where Blastoise appears: Beach Blank Out Blastoise, The Ties That Bind, and Can't Beat the Heat. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, ring that bell, all the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.